It was one of the bloodiest and most overlooked wars of the late 20th century. A conflict fought not in the deserts of the Middle East or the jungles of Asia, but in the rugged mountains and cities of the Caucasus. It was a war of ambushes and bombings, of tanks rolling into ruined streets, of civilians trapped between armies, and of a small nation daring to defy one of the most powerful states on earth. This was the Chechen Wars, a brutal struggle between Russia and the separatist region of Chechnya. A war that tested the might of the Russian military, scarred an entire generation, and left behind questions that still echo today. How could a small republic bring Moscow to its knees? And why did the conflict spiral into one of the most savage wars of modern times? To answer that, we have to start with history. Chechnya is a small region in the North Caucasus, a mountainous crossroads between Europe and Asia. Its people, the Chechens, are known for their fierce independence, tribal traditions, and a warrior culture forged through centuries of resisting outsiders. For Russia, the Caucasus has always been both a prize and a problem. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the Russian Empire expanded southward, trying to secure the Caucasus against Ottoman and Persian influence. But the Chechens refused to submit easily. They fought bitterly in what became known as the Caucasian War, a decades-long guerrilla struggle led by figures like Imam Shamil. Eventually, Russia prevailed, but at a heavy cost. The memory of resistance never faded. When the Soviet Union was formed, Chechnya was absorbed into it. Yet the Chechens remained a restless people. During World War II, Joseph Stalin accused them of collaborating with Nazi Germany and deported the entire population, hundreds of thousands of men, women, and children, to Central Asia. Tens of thousands died during this forced exile. Though they were allowed to return after Stalin's death, the wound remained deep. Chechens never forgot what they saw as betrayal and oppression. So when the Soviet Union began to collapse in the late 1980s, Chechnya saw its chance in 1991 as the USSR dissolved. Chechen leader Johar Dudayev declared independence for the Chechen Republic of Ichkeria. He was a former Soviet Air Force general, charismatic and defiant. But Moscow was not about to lose Chechnya. Not only was it strategically located, but its territory also lay along vital oil pipelines. Russia, now under Boris Yeltsin, was struggling with chaos at home and feared that letting Chechnya go would trigger other regions to break away. The stage was set for confrontation. At first, Russia hesitated. The early 1990s were a period of weakness for Moscow. The Russian army was demoralized, underfunded, and plagued by corruption. Meanwhile, Chechnya descended into lawlessness. Armed groups, warlords, and criminals flourished. Kidnapping became a booming business. Dudayev's government struggled to maintain control, but Chechens remained determined to resist Russian rule. Finally, in 1994, Yeltsin decided enough was enough. Russia would crush Chechnya and restore order. But what followed shocked the world. The First Chechen War began in December 1994, when Russian troops rolled into Chechnya, expecting a quick victory. They believed that overwhelming firepower would bring the rebellious region to heel within days. Instead, they walked into a nightmare. The Chechen fighters were outnumbered and outgunned, but they knew the terrain. They fought not in open fields, but in the streets of their capital, Grozny. What followed was urban warfare at its most brutal. In January 1995, Russian forces launched an assault on Grozny. Tanks and armored vehicles pushed into the city, expecting little resistance. Instead, they were ambushed at every turn. Chechen fighters used rocket-propelled grenades from basements and rooftops, turning the city into a death trap. Entire Russian columns were annihilated. One battalion lost nearly 800 men in just 2 days. Western observers compared it to Stalingrad Street, building by building, a slaughterhouse of modern warfare. The world watched in shock as one of the largest armies on Earth was humiliated by a few thousand guerrillas. But Russia did not back down. The war dragged on, becoming increasingly savage. Russian forces resorted to heavy bombardments, leveling whole districts of Grozny with artillery and airstrikes. Civilian casualties soared. The Chechens, led by commanders like Shamil Basayev and Aslan Maskhadov, Gadova struck back with guerrilla raids and surprise attacks. In 1996, they even staged a daring assault to recapture Grozny, proving that Russia could not truly control the region. By August of that year, the war ended in a ceasefire. Chechnya had not been officially recognized as independent, but in practice, Moscow had lost. For a brief moment, it seemed as if Chechnya had won its freedom. Yet peace was an illusion. Independent Chechnya descended into chaos. Warlords clashed, Islamic radicalism spread, and crime spiraled out of control. Kidnapping of foreigners became routine. Russia watched nervously, waiting for the chance to strike back. That chance came in 1999 when Chechen fighters, led by Basayev and a foreign jihadist named Ibn al-Khattab, invaded neighboring Dagestan. Russia seized the opportunity. At the same time, a series of apartment bombings rocked Russian cities, killing hundreds. Moscow blamed Chechen terrorists, though to this day the bombings remain shrouded in controversy. Whether planned or exploited, they gave Russia the justification it needed. A new war was launched, the Second Chechen War. This time, the man in charge was different. Boris Yeltsin was on his way out, and his little-known successor, Vladimir Putin, saw Chechnya as his chance to prove himself. Unlike Yeltsin, Putin was determined not just to defeat Chechnya, but to utterly crush its independence movement. The Russian military had learned from its failures. When they moved into Chechnya in late 1999, they came with overwhelming force. Once again, Grozny became the battlefield. The city was bombarded relentlessly. In early 2000, after weeks of siege, Grozny was reduced to rubble. The United Nations later called it the most destroyed city on Earth. But the war did not end there. The Chechens retreated into the mountains, launching a bitter insurgency. Russia responded with brutal counterinsurgency tactic sweeps: torture, disappearances, collective punishment. Villages were burned, civilians targeted, entire communities terrorized into submission. Human rights organizations accused Russia of systematic atrocities, but Putin would not budge. He installed a pro-Russian Chechen government under Akhmat Kadyrov, later replaced by his son Ramzan Kadyrov, who rules Chechnya with an iron fist to this day. Slowly, through sheer brutality and co-optation of local leaders, Russia reasserted control by the mid-2000s. The large-scale fighting had ended, but the scars remained. Tens of thousands of civilians were dead. Chechnya was devastated, its cities in ruins, its society fractured. Many of the surviving rebels spread their fight across the North Caucasus, fueling an Islamist insurgency that would continue for years. Meanwhile, Chechnya itself became a bizarre hybrid, officially part of Russia, but effectively ruled by Ramzan Kadyrov as his personal fiefdom, with Moscow's blessing. So what did the Chechen Wars mean? For Russia, they were both a humiliation and a turning point. The First Chechen War exposed the weakness of the Russian military and the chaos of the Yeltsin years. The Second Chechen War, by contrast, cemented Vladimir Putin's rise to power. His ruthless handling of the conflict won him popularity at home and defined his image as a strong leader. For Chechnya, the wars were catastrophic. Their dream of independence was crushed. Their society was shattered. What was once a struggle for national freedom became entangled with global jihad, leaving a legacy of violence that extended far beyond the Caucasus. And yet, the Chechen Wars hold a deeper lesson about modern conflict. They show how even small nations can defy great powers, how guerrilla tactics can humble conventional armies, and how brutal counterinsurgency can destroy not just rebels but entire communities. They remind us that in the modern age, wars are rarely clear victories. They are grinding, dirty, devastating for civilians caught in between. The Chechen fighters did not defeat Russia, yet they left scars on its psyche. The Russian army did not lose the Second Chechen War, but it won through methods that left its reputation stained. And Chechnya itself, rebellious, proud, scarred, remains a place where the echoes of war still whisper. The Chechen Wars may not be as famous as other conflicts of the modern era, but they shaped the Russia we know today, the rise of Vladimir Putin. and the lessons of urban guerrilla warfare that continue to influence conflicts from Syria to Ukraine. They were, in every sense, brutal modern wars fought in ruined streets, against the backdrop of collapsing empires and rising strongmen. And though the guns have gone quiet, the story of the Chechen Wars is far from over.